it's Linda from Lányos Handmade, and today we're going to sew up the Greedy Clutch wallet. This one also has spooky flaps added on to it. So there's 7 options for different kinds of flaps you can sew up. Check out all the videos because I think that everybody did a different flap. This one I did is called the Drippy flap for obvious reasons. So I want to thank the designer, Hollow Bag Creations, for giving us the pattern. And I want to thank Marathon Sewciety for letting me join in again. And be sure to check out everybody's videos. Now, not only does this bag have card slots inside, but like I said, it also has the flap options. And you can make a wrist strap or you can make a shoulder strap. It's up to you. Now, the one thing I want to say in my video is my vinyl was very thin and it didn't like being glued, I guess you could say, to the foam. So I did that process a little bit different just to accommodate my machine. But otherwise, I think I pretty much followed along. So how about we get all sugared up and start sewing. So I've got all my pieces sorted out. This is going to be my anchor strap, and this is going to be my wrist strap. So I'm going to get these ready first. And I've already got interfacing on the back of this one. This is fabric, so I need interfacing, but this is my vinyl, and I'm not going to do any interfacing on it. And I've got my next important piece is my Halloween cookie. So let's get started with these pieces. Now, I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I only have 1-inch hardware. I don't have anything really small. So I'm going to do these anchor straps just a bit differently. I've got some double-sided tape on the centers just so that I can try to stick them together a little bit better and make 2 layers. And I am going to, there, that's on there, good. I'm going to cut this in half and make one side 1 anchor and one side the other anchor. So I'll have to go measure and get right down the center to cut this in half. And then after it's cut in half, I'm going to just top stitch around this piece. And then of course this piece will be separate, right? So I'll top stitch around that piece too. And I'll come back and show you what it looks like. Okay, so like I said, I did these a bit differently because I have to make them 1 inch wide. And I just took 2 strips like she had, and I cut them. So I've got 4 strips now, and I just sewed them together, top stitched them together. And if you're ever top stitching and you find that you mess up, because the first top stitching is always so difficult, just stop sewing and pull your threads through to the back and tie them off. You can even put a little bit of glue on them, and then continue on sewing from that point. So I'm just going to clip these together because I don't want to lose my little ring, and put them aside, and we'll move on to the wrist strap. Now my wrist strap is cloth, and hers I think was vinyl. I'm pretty sure it was vinyl. So if you're making a cloth one, you do have the same measurements lengthwise, but you have to give extra for a hem and all the folding over and hiding the raw edges. So I'm going to sew these ends first. And then I will bring it back to you and show you what it looks like. Okay, I have hemmed the ends and turned it through and pressed it really well, tucking these edges in here. You have to kind of make sure that they're all nice and flat. Sometimes it helps to hold it as you push it through, like that. And then I pressed everything in nicely. Oops, hope I'm not shaking. And pressed it again. This fabric's really nice, this batik, because it really holds its shape. So I'm going to put some clips in this and top stitch around, just like I did on those little vinyl pieces. It'll make it look nice, and it'll also hold it all together. Okay, I've sewed around this, so this is all secure now. There's always a right side and a wrong side to these things, even though they both look good. But we always look really close and go, well, that's the bad side. So I'm going to put the bad side on the inside. And I could, since this is fabric, just sew this, and that would make our wrist strap. Or else I could put a hole in all the layers and put this turtle in. Now, if the post is big enough to go through everything, I'll use the turtle. But if it's not, I don't have any rivets. So if it's not, I will sew it, even if I have to hand sew it one layer at a time, just to get it to stay. So we shall see if I can get a hole that's, let's see if I can get this thing in here. Maybe I can, maybe I can't. But let's secure this right now. And we have success. I got the little turtle on there, put them through all the layers. I've got glue slopped all over the place, so I'll be picking that off for a while. What I did was I put glue on every layer in between to hold it down. Oh, and I also got my hammer and I smashed at it a bit to make it thinner. And that way I was able to get the Chicago screw through and glue every layer down on top of it. Now I get to spend my time picking the glue off. But this is done. So now we can fold the card slots. And here's my sheet of fabric for my card slots. It's always hard to figure out which is the right side. I prefer the sharper looking side to be the right side. So we're going to follow her instructions and fold as she says. This is not what she says, but I'm giving you an example here. So we measure out and fold and press according to what she says in the pattern, like a little accordion, and that way we'll have some nice card slots all set up. Now I'm going to go find the measurements and mark them and press them in, and then I'll come back and show you how specific they are. You can't just do them willy-nilly. Okay, I've pressed all my folds in and I pinned them. You'll see this is a little accordion here. And the thing I like is not actually marking them, but using this when I press, because this is supposed to be 1 1/4, like she says, and you can mark it on here and press as you go. So each line can be measured and pressed with this. So I really like that. Then after it's pressed, you top stitch just these pinned openings. This is going to be the top of your card slot, so you have to top stitch just this by itself, the 2 layers. And then after that's done, I can always press it again just in case I wrinkled it too much. Then I sew down the center to make 2 sections. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 card slots on this pattern piece. Okay, just to stop and show you here, I've just sewn the tops of the little pockets. So now I've pinned everything together, and I'm going to sew up this way. If I sew this way, I might get caught on the edges. So I'm going to sew up this way to put the center line down so we've got 2 sides. Done, done, done. Our card slots are ready. Now we have to put a little sides on. One of these sides is neater than the other, so right sides together. I'm going to sew these on, press them back, and then top stitch them so they look nice top stitched too. And then after I have to put the pattern piece on top to be able to get the notches in the side like the pattern piece looks. Okay, we've got everything ready now. That wasn't very difficult after all. I sewed on the side pieces and I cut the notches out exactly like the pattern. You have to trim this down and that just a little bit. And now this looks exactly like the pattern piece. So we can move on to the next step. Okay, we've got a bit of fancy work here to do the flap, which is okay. It's going to be fun. In the instructions, she says to stick the foam to the vinyl. And my machine was very fussy with the amount of spray adhesive that I was using. so I decided not to use it. What I am going to try instead is to zigzag all around the edges of this so I can attach something sturdy to this flimsy vinyl because it's not too thick, right? So I'm going to stick this around here first. And this is called Bouncy Firm, so I think it'll help out. So I'm going to sew this on here first, and then this is my foam, and I'm going to sew it on my lining. I've got a lighter weight lining here that I'm going to use, and that's going to take care of the 2 layers. And then, of course, I sew them right side together, turn it, and that would be my back. This would be my lining, and this would be my exterior. Except, after I attach this, zigzag this on, and zigzag this on, I'm going to use this and clip it nicely down so it stays. And I'm going to sew this on, and hoping here that this stiffness will help me sew around, because the foam certainly wasn't letting me do it. And I was also having difficulty finding something that I could write on my vinyl with without damaging it. So I think I'm going to try sewing it with this on here so that I can, and then pick it off afterwards, because my machine doesn't like this vinyl today. And then after, I can cut off what is not part of the design. So that's the whole thing I'm going to do. But step by step first, let's zigzag this Bouncy Firm on and zigzag this foam on. And then I'll come back and show you how we do the rest of it. Okay, so my foam is attached. Messy threads everywhere. And my vinyl has the interfacing attached to it. So now I can put this layer on top of it. It's pretty boring like that. I think I want to have this design put into it. So I'm going to clip this all on here. Oh, and I've got the glue because I used the glue. The spray adhesive was getting everywhere, and it was getting where I was sewing. So I have used this instead, and I put it where I'm not sewing. And that way it helped to keep the vinyl together with the interfacing. So I might put a bit of this dotted underneath here too to help keep this vinyl down as I sew. But I'll make sure I don't put it where I'm sewing. So that's pretty much it. I can just clip this and sew around to stick the little quilting design on. And then we can stick the 2 pieces together, right side together. Okay, my end result. Maybe you can see it easier, the black on the white. I took a little bit of liberty with her design because I tried to stay off the paper as much as I could. Of course, you know, I was too close to the edge up here, so I had to be on the paper. So now I can just rip this off carefully. I'll do it quickly to take the majority off here. And then I'll go around slowly and pick the rest off. And I didn't have any trouble sewing this. So I will carefully pick off the paper that's here. Hold the stitches down and pull the paper. And then I can cut around. I've got some scissors that work really well. I can cut around the design with this and cut off the rest of the red. And then after we put the snaps in. Okay, I've got this sewn. You can see the design and sewn. And I used my duckbill scissors to trim in here and take the design off. Got all these little odd pieces left. And I used my tweezers, these are rainbow ones from RC Threadcraft, to pick out the paper. And I did not bother with the paper up here as much because this is the seam allowance, right? So I'm not worried about it. So this is pretty much done. This is going to be the piece that has our snap in. I've already made the holes. I marked them off and everything. So they go in here. And then after snap, it'll be on the inside so that we can snap our bag shut. I want a little bit of backing on here. Stuff's pretty sturdy here. Try and get through. And I'm also going to put some tape on top of it too. Here's my washer. And I'm going to bend them over, but I just might go and hammer on them too because I don't like the little rough ridge sticking up there. So I just might go give it a little slight hammer just to flatten that down. And then after we sew these two pieces right side together, leave the top open because that's where we're going to turn it. And then after we turn it, we can top stitch it along the edges. So I'm going to go give this a hammer and sew these right side together. Okay, just to catch you up, I sewed around and I also took a lot out of here so that I don't have as much to bother with. And now I can turn it. And I've got this little tool that does pointy corners or round corners. I like dragging it through, making sure everything is out. I don't want to ball up those things down there, but I do want them sitting nice. Yeah, that's a nice corner. And that's a nice corner too. So I'm going to go press this a little bit. I don't think I can go, well, maybe I can. I might not be able to top stitch through all these layers. And if that's the case, I'm not going to do it and mess it up. I'm just going to press it instead, even if I have to stick a pressing cloth over top of it to get the edges flat. But I don't think I want to push it with the foam and everything that's inside there. So I'm going to press it flat and then sew this shut. And then we can move on to the body pieces. Well, you could tell from the zigzagging that I was having a tough time with the layers, but it worked. So now I move on to the next part. Okay, I've got my pieces. You might notice that I put my foam on my fabric, not on my vinyl, because then we get into the same problem I was having before with the flap. So I can't use the spray adhesive to put foam on. So I have to sew it on. So I'm going to sew it onto the lining inside. It's going to make it tough to turn, but I'm used to it. So these two pieces are fine to go. This is going to be my back. This is going to be my front. And I marked and poked my holes in for my snap. So I can push through. I think I'll put a bit of this on too. I've got holes there, maybe something even sturdier, because this is very fine vinyl and it might not hold it, but I think this will. And then I will get some tape and make sure that these little pokey things are covered. And then that is going to match up with our front. So I'm going to make sure that this is in here good and cover it up. And then I think we're going to be sewing all these pieces together. Okay, snaps on. I think that'll hold. This is the front. This is the back. This flap goes on the back. Then after I sew it on the back, I can also sew up my pleats here. So I'm going to stick a little, well, I was going to stick a clip. It's gone. I'll be on my hands and knees searching for it so Sophie doesn't eat it. Okay, so let's put these pleats together too, because we can sew those up too. I've got a few pleats. Just put them right sides together. I've got one more to clip together here. And then we'll come back and we'll sew our linings and our exterior back together. Okay, I've stuck these little darts in here. Of course, they're going to face this way. Like this, inside the bag. And the other thing about it is now we can put these two things right side together and sew them together. And when we do, make sure the darts face opposite to each other. Now the other thing is I have to leave an opening in the bottom for turning. So I'm not going to sew because it's so thick. I'm not going to sew from here to here. I'll hand sew that afterwards. And when I'm hand sewing, I might even cut some of this foam out of the hand sewn seam, but I'll show you that later. So right now I just go around here. But remember, don't sew between your darts for your lining. The sheet gives a measurement of what to leave open, but I'm going to leave open the max because this is so thick. And then on this one too, this is the back with the flap and this is the front. And I'm going to sew these two together the same way, all the way around. There, I've just clipped this up so it stays out of the way. And then I can sew them right sides together without worrying about the flap. And I put a little of this interfacing here so that the teeth wouldn't leave marks. Okay, we've got our lining pieces sewn together, and we've got our exterior pieces sewn together. I can probably take that out now. There you go. And let's turn this because I'm pretty sure the next thing we do is stick the strap anchors on the side. And I have to go get the measurements, but basically we're going to use like this. We're going to put a rivet in this side and a rivet in this side and have it nicely centered between both. Now with mine, I'm going to get a strip of something really heavy duty and put a patch on this side and go through the patch too, because this material, this vinyl will not hold it proper. It'll only rip out. So I'm going to put a big strip of some kind of heavy duty interfacing inside so that it doesn't rip out my vinyl, just like I did with this. And then on this side, you might notice, of course, we had to leave the hole in the bottom, and then I unpicked it where the foam was attached and left this gap, because this way I can sew this up, whether by machine or by hand, and not have to worry about going through the foam. And yet when we turn it, the foam's going to be sitting at the bottom there anyway, so it'll be okay. So this piece we don't touch yet. This piece we have to put our anchors on so that our wrist strap can sit on it. Now I'm going to put on two to make it balanced out, and that way you can choose whether it's on this side or this side. So I'm going to go get some reinforcement here and punch my holes where they're supposed to be and put this on. Okay, here's the first one done. And if you look at the inside, you'll see my bouncy firm in there. And if you're wondering what I did, first I got a couple of pieces of bouncy firm and this, and I put the holes in this. The holes in the bag were actually last. And then I put this up against the bag where it was supposed to be, and I punched the last hole. And then after I threaded this through, on the other side, I glued it and put bouncy firm on. And then I, of course, lined up the hole, put it through the hole, glued it, put another one on, lined up the hole, glued in the hole, and put the screw on. So there are 2 layers of bouncy firm glued to the inside here, and hopefully that'll be good enough to make sure that this doesn't ever rip out, because that would not be good news. So I will finish off with this one, and then we'll see what the next step is. Okay, now that these are both finished, I'm going to try and keep the flap out of the way, although it's really big. And let's put the exterior inside here. I can crush it up at least. And then we line up the side seams. I've got some monstrous clips to do that. And we line up this top edge all the way around. There's another side seam I can line up. And then we'll just sew around the top. Okay, I've sewed around the top. First I zigzagged to baste it and to crush it, and then I sewed around the top. My inside is inside this hole, and I'm going to pull it out, and we shall see if I manage to sew anything into the seam that I just sewed that I wasn't supposed to, because sometimes that happens. So let's just turn this. So now we can close this, and then we can shove it inside here, and that is what will give our bag some shape. So I'm just going to fold these over the way they are. I think I'm going to use the machine to sew it together. We shall see. We shall see. Maybe I can do it by hand. I prefer by hand. Oh, I might be able to do it. I'm going to go press the seam allowance down, and then that way I will know where I'm supposed to sew. Okay, now that the bottom is sewn shut, and it's done quite well actually, very sturdy, I can push all this inside. And I can top stitch around the top. Now, I might not do that with my machine. We shall see. And I have to put on a wrist strap. So how'd that go? Be sure and share your mix, because I'm leaving links below for the groups, and there's lots of options. You can pick which one you like and post it there. I want to say thank you to the pattern designer, Hollow Bag Creations, for giving us the pattern. And I want to say thank you to the Marathon Society for including us again. Be sure and check out everybody else's videos. And happy Halloween.